Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over 10 players that you must add off of the waiver wire prior to week number 2 of the 2024 fantasy football season. We're actually going to be talking about 14 players in today's video that you guys want to run on over to the waiver wire to pick up. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys do end up enjoying today's video and you are new to the channel, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into 10 players you must add before week 2 of the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the first waiver wire ad of the week, and that is J.K. Dobbins, running back of the Los Angeles Chargers, going up against the Carolina Panthers this week in Carolina. J.K. Dobbins is currently rostered in 50% of leagues on Yahoo, 76.9% on ESPN, and 11.5% on NFL. So I'm fully aware that J.K. Dobbins isn't going to be available in a majority of your guys' leagues, but if for some reason J.K. Dobbins is available, you need to not just walk, have a gingerly stroll to the waiver wire. You need to run to the waiver wire right now because J.K. Dobbins looks like the #1 back on the Los Angeles Chargers. He was the running back 5 on the week in PPR, going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this is prior to Monday Night Football because this video is recorded and released before Monday Night Football ends up being played between the Jets and the 49ers. So very possible J.K. Dobbins moves on down to the running back 7. In that matchup, he had 10 carries for 135 yards, 13.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown. 3 receptions on 3 targets for 4 yards as well. He outsnapped Gus Edwards, 33 snaps for Dobbins, 24 for the Gus bus. Now, I do believe that it's not like J.K. Dobbins is going to put Gus Edwards into a sleeper hold and be this workhorse running back like Christian McCaffrey or Breece Hall, something like that, Saquon Barkley. But ultimately, I do think if he continues to be the lead back, which is what week 1 showed us, then J.K. Dobbins could be a league winner that you could have drafted late on in your fantasy football drafts like I advised. Or you could pick him up off the waiver wire last week, like I told you. Or if you waited and he's still available now, make sure that you go ahead and pick him up. Now, player number 2 is Isaiah Likely. So J.K. Dobbins, not available in a majority of leagues. That's why we went pretty super fast mode, like an only use me blade old school video. But here, we'll break down Isaiah Likely a little bit further. Isaiah Likely, the waiver wire pickup number 2 of the Baltimore Ravens, going up against the Viva Las Vegas Raiders this week. 28% rostered on Yahoo, 9.8% on ESPN, and 13.3% on NFL. With a bunch of tight ends hurt, and with the tight end production overall in week number 1 being no bueno, Likely should be amongst the top waiver wire ads. Now, it is important to understand that last season after week 1, Hunter Henry was the #1 tight end in fantasy football, and we remember how that ended up playing out. Hunter Henry wasn't worth jack shit as you got later on into the season. So week 1, week 2, week 3, you got to take things with a grain of salt. It is not the end all be all because Isaiah Likely went balls deep into the Chiefs defense. Doesn't mean that he's going to do that every single week. It's very likely that that was Likely's best performance. Tight end 1 on the week in PPR up against the Chiefs. 9 receptions on 12 targets, 111 yards, 12.3 yards per reception, and 1 touchdown. Could have put up 2 tugs in that game, Deshaun Watson style, if his foot was just slightly smaller, right? So Isaiah Likely has this great game, but again, Andrews outsnapped him in that game 58-52. So I don't expect every single game to have a outcome where Isaiah Likely is the clear #1 tight end target out of the 2. Watching tape, going back and watching the tape of that game, the all 22, it was abundantly clear that the Kansas City Chiefs game plan was to bracket Mark Andrews, to make everyone, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Rashad Master Bateman, the other weapons, beat the Chiefs. They were going to make sure that there were multiple men surrounding Andrews all game long, and that ended up with Andrews having a very bad game and Isaiah Likely stomping on the potential grave of the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs won that game again by a pinky toe. So Isaiah likely has a huge week 1 performance. I expect him to cool down, but based upon what we saw last week makes it very clear that both of these tight ends could be very valuable in fantasy football, and I believe they could both easily finish inside of the top 12 at the position by the end of the season. At number 3, we have a lot of question marks at quarterback. So Baker Mayfield, if you need a quarterback, you don't really want to play Caleb Williams, you don't really want to play some of these other quarterbacks that didn't look the hottest, then Baker Mayfield would be the guy to pick up. Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Last time these two teams played in the playoffs, it was very fun. I think this game has all of the potential to be incredibly high scoring. 35% rostered on Yahoo for Baker, 34% on ESPN, 24.4% on NFL. Quarterback 2 on the week up against the Commanders, 24 completions on 30 attempts, 80% completion percentage, 289 passing yards, and not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 fucking touchdowns on the head top of the Commanders, and 3 rushes for 21 yards. Now, we all know deep down that Baker having that crazy performance up against the Commanders isn't insanely surprising. Now, 4 touchdowns, 80% completion percentage is awesome, but it was up against the Washington Commanders. So I'm not going to sit here and give the Hawk to a special to Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield is a very competent quarterback, and it appears that losing Dave Canales wasn't going to be something that weighed Baker Mayfield down like maybe we previously believed. There are so many solid weapons on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He could always dump the ball down to Rachaad White. He's got Magic Mike Evans, who was absolutely dominating 50 Shades of Grey style in that game up against the Commanders. They have Chris Godwin, who looked great, as well as Jalen McMillan, and they also have a tight end who is relatively skilled in terms of Cade Otton. So Baker Mayfield has a great setup around him. Going up against the Lions will definitely be a much tougher look than up against the Commanders. I highly doubt he repeats as a top 5 quarterback, but it is definitely possible. At number 4, so the first 2 guys, they are must pickups. No brainer. You want both of those guys. If your quarterback is a little bit suspect, then Baker Mayfield is a guy that you definitely want. Now we get into the range where it is bargain shopping, right? You're kind of just looking at some running backs, some wide receivers with upside. At number 4, we got a running back with upside, Jaleel McLaughlin of the Denver Broncos going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 37% rostered on Yahoo, 44.3% on ESPN, and 9.2 on NFL. Now, he was the running back 38 in week 1 in PPR up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. 10 carries for 27 yards and 5 receptions on 5 targets for 1 yard with a fumble. Now, Javonte Williams did end up out-snapping Jaleel McLaughlin, but Jaleel outplayed Javonte Williams. Only had 8 carries for 23 yards and 1 reception on 2 targets for 0 yards. Jaleel played 24 snaps. Now, a lot of the reason why this game didn't go great for the Broncos was because Bo Nix did not look great at all. He absolutely peppered Courtland Sutton, but nothing really ended up working. Now, that was game 1 of Bo Nix's NFL career, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Bo Nix is some absolute fucking bust, that Bo Nix reeks to high heaven. But after 1 game, we don't have the best tell of this Broncos offense. Jaleel feels like a guy that if you're in a deeper league or if you suffer a bunch of running back injuries, he would be a fine guy to play due to the amount of targets he'll receive and due to the high amount of targets that running backs get in the Sean Payton system. But when push comes to shove with Javonte healthy, it's not the most ideal scenario to start Jaleel. Another guy that I believe is the backup is Alexander Mattison, running back of the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the Baltimore Ravens this week in Baltimore. 4% rostered on Yahoo, 10.2% on ESPN, and 0.8% on NFL. Now, he was the running back 16 in PPR last week up against the Chargers. 5 carries for 19 yards in LA, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 43 yards and a touchdown. He broke off a solid reception in that game up against the Chargers defense, and he did end up out-snapping Zamir White. 36 snaps for Mattison, 23 for Zamir. Zamir lost a fumble in that game, but, and this is a big but, shout out Kim Kardashian, I don't necessarily think week 1 is the biggest indicator of this backfield. I don't think it's a guarantee that week 2 up against the Ravens, Mattison gets a majority of the snaps. Zamir fucked up, he fumbled, and he paid the price for it. Now, Mattison, I don't think is the best running back ever. I don't think Alexander Mattison is very good, but if Mattison does end up becoming the lead back in Viva Las Vegas, he does at least have some value. He was the running back 16 in PPR in week number 1. Now, to me, it might be a little bit fugazi, so I'm not going to sit here and blow my wad of fab on Alexander Mattison, but I do definitely think he is worthy of a pickup. At number 6, we got Tank Bigsby, running back of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Browns this week. 5% rostered on Yahoo, 4.6 on ESPN, and 0.5 on NFL. Now, all offseason long, I was massaging the testicles, metaphorically, of Tank Bigsby's teammate, Etienne. I liked Etienne a ton, and I thought that Tank Bigsby wasn't even worthy of a talking point because I talked up Tank Bigsby last season. I loved Tank Bigsby, but Tank Bigsby ultimately looked like a steaming pile of dog shit last season. But this season, he comes out up against my Dolphins, and he kicks us in the teeth. In Miami, he's the running back 34, sure, not the best in terms of finish, but 12 carries for 73 yards, 6.1 yards per carry. Now, he was dominated in terms of snap counts. Etienne had 37, Tank Dell 17 snaps. But what that game showed us is that Tank Bigsby related to Ned Bigsby of the Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, if you've ever seen that show. But Tank Bigsby, to me, looked good. So I'm ready to push my priors aside and say, you know what? While I'm never going to start Tank Bigsby over Etienne, if Etienne was to get hurt, Tank Bigsby has that league-winning upside. Knock on wood, though, we don't root for injuries. At number 7, we move to Bucky Irving, the second to last running back in this video. Now, Bucky Irving, just like Tank Bigsby, is the clear handcuff, right? Jaleel McLaughlin, to me, also feels like the handcuff to Mr. Javonte, but maybe Jaleel will outplay Javonte. Same thing with Mattison over Zamir. But Tank Bigsby, very clearly the number 2. Bucky Irving, very clearly the number 2. But both Bucky and Tank Bigsby looked good. Bucky Irving this week going up against the Lions in Detroit. Obviously, I think you would be a little bit crazy to play Irving or Bigsby or any of the running backs that we've listed so far, but Bucky looked good. Now, I am hesitant to really say, wow, Bucky Irving, this, that, and the other thing, because it was up against the Commanders. And the Commanders' defense gets slashed by anyone, right? The Commanders' defense isn't very good, but 9 carries for 62 yards, 6.9 average. Very nice, I like my name of Borat, and 2 receptions on 3 targets for 14 yards. Rashad, clearly the running back one, though. 44 snaps for him, 20 for Bucky. Again, just another high-value handcuff for the fantasy season. At number 8, we got a guy that you can start this week, and that is Dermarcus Robinson, going up against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. If you don't know Dermarcus Robinson, he is a wide receiver on the Rams. 6% rostered on Yahoo, 14.8% on ESPN, and 0.5% on NFL. Puka Nacua is considered week to week after re-aggravating the same knee injury that he suffered in the summer, which screams, no bueno. This is not good at all. Worst case scenario, week to week, never sounds good. It's not day to day, where day to day is like, oh, maybe Puka will fucking suit up against the Arizona Cardinals. Week to week means we might be fucked for a while if you have Puka Nacua. Dermarcus Robinson was the wide receiver 46, but that doesn't really tell the tale of the game up against the Lions. Rams wide receiver snap counts. Cooper Kupp, 78. Puka, 25. I get he got hurt. But Dermarcus Robinson, 72. Just 6 less snaps than Cooper Kupp. 4 receptions on 7 targets for 42 yards. We have seen it in the past with Dermarcus Robinson. While this guy isn't one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, he is a great wide receiver 3 that when elevated into the number 2 role can be very reliable in fantasy football and has big upside due to the speed that he has. A matchup up against the Arizona Cardinals could be one of those rock'em sock'em robots fights that we talk about where it's a very high scoring game, where both teams are beaten down on each other. You remember the Cardinals versus the Bills last week. I think this game has the upside of being one of the highest scoring games on the week. And even if the Arizona Cardinals aren't potentially able to catch up, which I think they will be able to, this is a great matchup up against the Cardinals defense. So I would be ecstatic to pick up Dermarcus Robinson if I had Puka. He's definitely a very solid replacement. Real quick cut in right here. Sorry if this comes from like out of the ordinary. It has just been reported that Puka Nacua has been placed on the IR, which means he'll be out for at least the next 4 games, which kind of aligns with my prior suspicion that week to week is really no bueno. That is not good at all. So for the next 4 weeks, that will really be a huge boost for Dermarcus Robinson. It is also important to note that Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert did not practice on Monday. If they do not practice on Tuesday, that would make Jalen Wright a must-add running back. At number 9, we move to Brandin Cooks, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, the most recent report on Jake Ferguson is that he could end up playing on Sunday. Now, I think that is the most likely scenario, but I will note that it is plausible at this point on Monday. As the week goes along, you'll hear more and more about him. 33% rostered on Yahoo for Brandin Cooks, 29.7% on ESPN, 12.2% on NFL. Now, he was the wide receiver 19 in week 1 up against the Cleveland Browns, but I'm not ready to fully jump on the Brandin Cooks bandwagon. But I do know that if we don't see Jake Ferguson out there, I do think Brandin Cooks would be start worthy. 4 receptions on 7 targets for 40 yards and a tug, 1 rush for 5 yards. Now, I was someone in the offseason that really liked Jalen Tolbert, and Tolbert played a solid role in this offense. Cooks had the most snaps at wide receiver with 49. Lamb had 42. I think they're kind of just easing him in. I don't think Lamb will be the second wide receiver in snaps going forward, and 40 snaps for Jalen Tolbert. So Tolbert clearly carved a role into this offense like Andy Dufresne fucking carved a hole in the wall to escape from prison, climbing through 3 football fields of shit, as what's his name said in that movie, Morgan Freeman. So Brandin Cooks looked solid. He's reached unk status. He's old. He's been passed around the NFL, but ultimately up against the Saints in a revenge game, I think Brandin Cooks is fine. Again, I'm not gonna be like must start Brandin Cooks, but it's fine. At number 10, we move to Colby Parkinson. So anyone that's not able to get likely, you need a tight end replacement. You got Njoku, you got Ferguson. Look no further than Colby Parkinson of the Los Angeles Rams going up against the Cardinals in Arizona. 6% rostered on Yahoo, 1.5% on ESPN, and 1.6% on NFL. He was the tight end 7 on the week up against the Lions. Again, important to note that these stats are not final. This game tonight. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 45 yards. Tight end snap counts, Parkinson had 69, Davis Allen had 6, and my boy Hunter Long had 3. So Colby Parkinson, very clearly the tight end 1, until their other tight end ends up returning, Tyler Higbee. So up against the Cardinals, if he gets 5 targets, he could find pay dirt. Am I going to rank him super highly? No, but he definitely is a start-worthy tight end, especially if you are down astronomical because your starting tight end ended up going down and yelling timber. Before we move on into player 11, 12, 13, and 14, I would like to ask if you guys are new to the channel and have ended up enjoying so far, that you hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video whether you are new to the channel or not. And I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you are new to Underdog Fantasy and sign up with code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, you'll be able to claim your free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Tonight, the free pick is Ron Rodgers, Mr. Discount Double Check, higher than half of a total yard. If you see this video on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there will be a different free pick for you, as Aaron Rodgers would have already played tonight on Monday Night Football. You match that pick with another pick, and you receive 3 times the amount that you put into your pick'em. You can also put more than just 2 players. That was just an example. So Underdog Fantasy, I love it over on there. If you sign up with code Notorious, you can claim your first free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Again, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. So player number 11 here is going to be Justice Hill. Now, the most recent report from head coach Harbaugh of the Baltimore Ravens, we're not talking about the other Harbaugh, who's the head coach of the Chargers, said that Henry was not signed for him to get 30-plus carries a game. So Henry's the guy, but they're going to use Justice Hill. Justice Hill, 42 snaps. Henry, 37 up against the Chiefs. This week they go up against the Raiders. 4% rostered on Yahoo, 3.3 on ESPN, 1% on NFL. I think Justice Hill is a solid handcuff. He's going to catch enough balls, pause, to be fine if you're in a super deep league, but again, more of a handcuff. If something was to happen, though, to Henry, we could very clearly see Hill having that top 18, 16, maybe even a top 12 game based upon matchups. Again, knock on wood, we don't for injuries. Running back 27 on the week, 1 carry for 3 yards, but he had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 52 yards. Once Keaton Mitchell returns, it will kind of complicate things. It will shake it up like that Taylor Swift song. But as of right now, Justice Hill would be the handcuff to have on Baltimore. At number 12, we got Magic Mike Williams, wide receiver of the Jumbo Jets, going up against the Tennessee Titans in week numero dos in Tennessee. 43% rostered on Yahoo, 70.1 on ESPN, and 32.7 on NFL. So he is more than likely rostered in your at-home league. But if you scan the waiver wire, you peruse the waiver wire, and you see that Magic Mike Williams is available, I would pick him up. Now, we don't know how he performs up against the 49ers. Even if he doesn't have a great game, I do still believe he is worthy of a bench spot because I think he's the clear number 2 receiver on an Aaron Rodgers offense, which could pay dividends. At number 13, we got the last quarterback of today's video. So if you're down bad at quarterback, you're nervous, I think Justin Fields is worthy of a shot. Now, this is assuming, and assumptions sometimes make an ass out of you and me. So again, this is just an assumption, is that Justin Fields is the QB1 in week number 2 up against a bad Denver Broncos defense. I think Justin Fields could carve them up like the Thanksgiving turkey, like a lightsaber through Han Solo's chest. 14% rostered on Yahoo, 11% on ESPN, 3.4 on NFL. Now, week 16 up against the Falcons was nothing special, nothing to write home about. Quarterback 16. Did I say week 16? Week 1 against the Falcons if I said that. Backtrack if I didn't. Quarterback 16 up against the Falcons in Hotlanta. He looked good. 17 completions on 23 attempts for 156 yards, 14 rushes for 57 yards. Well, obviously, 156 passing yards, 57 rushing yards isn't going to win you your week. He was the quarterback 16. For the time he had to prepare, I think he looked good. Now he gets a way better matchup up against the Denver Broncos defense with the immense amount of rushing upside. If he rushes 50 yards and instead of no touchdowns, he rushes in a touchdown, maybe he luck boxes into passing a touchdown as well, you could end up with Justin Fields being a top 5 quarterback due to the matchup. Again, is he guaranteed to be the starter in week number 2? No, but I don't know why you win week 1 up against a formidable opponent in the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons are some shit to your team, so that was a solid win for them. I think up against Denver, you want to ride with Justin Fields. So I think Justin Fields up against Denver is a high upside start. And we kind of saw his floor game, which was quarterback 16. The final guy to discuss here is Andrei Iosivas, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. 12% rostered on Yahoo, 7.4 on ESPN, and 1.7% on NFL. Now, the optimism on T. Higgins from head coach Zach Taylor doesn't sound the most promising. It's kind of like Belichick. We'll see, basically, is what he said. We'll see on Wednesday. That doesn't sound great. If T. Higgins is out again, I expect to see a whole lot of Iosivas in that game up against the Chiefs. Now, do I really want to start him against the Chiefs? Probably not, but if everything went wrong, I'd be fine with it. 3 receptions on 6 targets for 26 yards. He was the wide receiver, 59 against the Patriots, but he saw the exact same amount of targets as Jamar Chase. Iosivas seems like the clear number 2 in this offense with T. Higgins out. So again, if your back is up against the wall, you could start Iosivas in this game. Again, it's hard to pronounce this guy's name because it's like Iosivas, but it's Iosivas, I believe. If I got that wrong, sorry to Mr. Andre. So thank you guys all for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, if you use promo code Notorious, you will receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That free pick that is on the screen that I'm pointing to right now, Rodgers tonight, higher than half of a total yard. If you don't do it tonight, you see this later in the week, you can go ahead and get another free pick, which will be something like this with a different quarterback. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. Check out one of the videos on screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.